This is the new Range Rover Sport SV, and it's a replacement for the old Range Rover Sport SVR, except, of course, it's based on the latest generation Range Rover Sport. It's set apart by this more muscular bodywork and these absolutely enormous wheels, but it's also got a new engine. While the old model's R designation has been dropped, so too has the 5-litre supercharged V8, and in its place is a 4.4-litre twin turbocharged example. The question is, has the quite literal change of heart made this a better or a worse performance SUV? While the Range Rover Sport SV's exterior is much more muscly than that of the standard car, the interior upgrades are a little bit more subtle. Yes, you get these rather nicely sculpted seats, and you get a little bit of carbon fibre down here and here. You get a sports steering wheel as well, and these clear gear shift selectors. But actually the overall design is much the same. You get the same minimalist cabin design, you get the same massive central touchscreen and digital instrument display. It's all beautifully made, the materials are fabulous, but it doesn't feel quite as special as you might be expecting. That said, because it's just the same as every other Range Rover Sport, you get lots of storage space, you get acres of space in the back. Fitting 4 6-foot adults in here is really easy. And you get a massive boot. But there's still that little hint of the spectacular that's just missing slightly. Key to this SV version of the Range Rover Sport is the new engine. It's a 4.4-litre V8, and it started out life as a BMW engine. It's the same 4.4-litre V8 you get in an X5M competition or even an X6M competition. But Land Rover has breathed on it a little bit. New software means you get 635 horsepower rather than 625 in the X5 and X6. And unlike the old 5-litre V8 that you got in the old Range Rover Sport SVR, this one's got 2 turbochargers rather than 1 supercharger. The decrease in size and the move to turbocharging means this is a little bit more efficient than the old SVR's engine, but the difference really isn't that big. I mean, 18 grams a kilometre less, and this still guzzles petrol. It really gets through it. It also doesn't sound quite as good as the old SVR engine, but modern world emissions and all that, it's not entirely surprising, and the turbos will take some of that exhaust gas out as well. Even with the smaller engine and the move to turbos, this thing is still incredibly quick. Doesn't feel that fast, primarily because it's just so big. But despite weighing 2.5 tons, this thing gets from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 3.8 seconds. That's roughly on a par with other high-performance SUVs, Porsche Cayenne, Turbo SE Hybrid, and all that kind of thing. But it's only a few tenths behind some really hot 911s, Audi R8, stuff like that. Really, really is quick. And if I put it in dynamic mode, wherever that's gone on this enormous touchscreen, get a little bit more exhaust noise, and it really hauls. And the thing is, there's a lot of ass here to haul. This thing feels really, really quite heavy. Every kilo of it's 2.5 tons. And that's 2.5 tons before you put petrol and people in there. And that's despite weight-saving measures that are in here. You've got these sport seats, you've got the carbon fibre wheels, which are supposed to save 70-odd kilos. But it's still a really, really heavy thing. We're talking similar weight to a Cullinan, similar weight to a Bentayga. It's that big. And the result is that getting going and getting stopped take quite some doing. And although this thing feels like it's got power in reserve all the time, doesn't feel quite as snappy and as quick as some of the other high-performance SUVs out there. And when you press the pedal on the left, you know you're trying to stop a big, heavy thing. You put a little bit of pressure in there and suddenly you think, oh no, I need a bit more. No, I need more. And then the corner's there, and yeah, you need quite a lot. That takes a bit of getting used to, but once you're up to speed with it, it's fine. You can live with it. And actually the brakes, whether you go for the standard steel ones or the optional carbon ceramic, they're really, really effective. They just require quite a push. Despite all that weight and all that bulk, this thing is still a Range Rover, and that means it needs to do two things. It needs to perform off-road like a Land Rover should, and it needs to be a big, wafty luxury car. I'm happy to report it manages both. The ride for something that is both an off-roader and a track car is sensational. Really, really good. Particularly at high speed. On the motorway, it just wafts along like it's riding on a sort of bed of air. But then it is, because you get clever air suspension with 3 valves and no anti-roll bars. Each suspension tower works independently, which means it can absorb the bumps much more easily. It also means you get incredible axle articulation, so for going over uneven surfaces, there's much more bandwidth in the suspension. And bandwidth is what the SV is all about, because, like I say, this has to cover both bases. It has to be sporty and utility. The handling is remarkable. This thing's got what they call 6D suspension, which basically uses electronics to try and counter the roll and the pitch that you get when you brake hard or when you corner hard. Although it all sounds a bit arty-farty, it works really, really well. There's this incredible poise for something so tall and so heavy. You can turn into corners, you can throw it around, and it just laps it up. It'll take well over 1G laterally in a corner, and that's partly due to the tyres. This one's fitted with all-terrain tyres, but you can get conventional summer tyres as well. To be honest, you don't notice you're on all-terrain tyres, but when you take this thing off-road, they really make a difference. This thing is incredibly capable. Now, admittedly, the handbook does say you should take the front splitter off if you want to take this thing off-road, because that dirty grey jutting chin at the front really makes the approach angle when you're coming down a slope or approaching a slope a lot less impressive. But 6 screws, take it all off, and then this thing will conquer anything. With this air suspension, you get a choice of 2 off-road settings, one slightly higher than the other, which allows for maximum wading depth. Almost a metre this thing will wade through. And it also means that you can get over the top of boulders and whatever. And if this thing grounds out, there's another stage. So you can bump it up a little bit. You can't do that in any other situation. The car has to detect that it's grounded out. But it will do it. And that means this thing will go anywhere you want. Basically, if it'll fit through the gap, and that's quite difficult because it's wide. It's a big car nowadays. The Range Rover Sport didn't used to be that massive, and now they're enormous. Oh my God. So I've been driving 14.3 kilometers. Set off with a full tank and the fuel gauge has already moved. Jesus Christ. I mean, you need deep pockets to buy this thing. But you need even deeper pockets to run the damn thing. Oh, I love an old school V8. Such a good noise. Even with the turbos dampening down the exhaust note, it's a lovely gurgle that it produces. It's great. It is the sound of exploding petrol, of course, and that means it's also the sound of exploding Euros. This thing drinks fuel like it's going out of fashion. But for that noise, it's a compromise I'm almost tempted to make. But to be honest, the fact that it's so big is just another testament to how capable this thing is. The fact that you can do all this off-road stuff, the fact that you can drive it like your hair's on fire, is actually really impressive in something this big. Of course, that's partly down to the clever electronics in the suspension, which keeps everything flat when you're going through corners and stops it pitching and diving too much when you're braking or accelerating. Of course, the laws of physics come into it. It's not going to handle like a supercar on a track. It's not going to do all the off-road stuff that you'd do from that Defender. But the fact that it can get so close to both ends of the spectrum just makes this enormously capable. Anyway, the point is, this thing is enormously capable in any situation. Whatever you throw at it, it will deal with. You want to drive on a mountain road at stupid speeds? You do it. If you want to go through a muddy field, not a problem. You want to park outside a posh hotel? You'll fit right in. And to get all of that from a car is kind of the ultimate car. The car is a brilliant tool for taking you where you want to go, for doing all the things you want to do. So the car with the most capability in every scenario is sort of peak car. And while this thing isn't perfect, guzzles fuel, costs an absolute fortune, and this kind of frozen green paintwork that's an extraordinarily expensive option really doesn't do anything for me. But if you want one car to do it all, you're going to have to go quite a long way to beat this. In fact, the only thing I can really think of is the Porsche Cayenne Turbo S e-hybrid, which is a big old beast, but by God, it's capable. Probably not quite as capable off-road as this, probably a little bit more capable on a track, but it's also a plug-in hybrid. While that won't suit everybody in terms of fuel economy and all the rest of it, I mean, it's still got a 4-litre V8, it's hardly eco. It isn't stupid in terms of tax. It means you can actually use it for short journeys, at least in electric mode alone, and that keeps your fuel bills down. And unless you're really going to use the off-road capability of a Range Rover, you don't need it. The Porsche will be just as nice, and it, of course, promises Porsche reliability and build quality. It's not to say that the Range Rover isn't nicely made. It is. Some of these materials are fantastic. This is the non-leather interior, and it's really rather nice. But a Porsche is a wonderful, wonderful thing, and I'd have the Turbo SE hybrid over this. But even that can't detract from what a fantastic, fantastic achievement this car is. Yes, you'll need incredibly deep pockets to have one, but if you have one, you have one of the all-time great all-rounders. The new Range Rover Sport SV is a simply stunning piece of engineering. The Range Rover has always been about mixing capability and luxury, and this thing just increases the breadth of that capability. Not only is it a brilliant off-roader, it's a fantastic motorway cruiser, but it's also borderline sports car. Getting that mixture is quite a rare thing. And though this is a very expensive way of getting from A to B, it's an incredibly good one. Now, were it my money, yeah, I'd probably save myself a hell of a lot and have a Porsche Cayenne Turbo SE hybrid. But if, for whatever reason, you don't want a hybrid and you're happy to spend the money, there are places far worse than this.